Welcome to the Lab2 exercise called Publish, Subscribe. The purpose of this lab is for you to apply your understanding of the basic MQTT session parameters to configure and initiate publish and subscribe message sequences using MQTT clients running on your PC, and to apply additional filters in Wireshark to separate captured traffic from several different clients. In Lab 2, we introduce both a publisher and a subscriber client. The publisher client publishes messages to a topic using a QoS2 delivery assurance level, while the subscriber client subscribes to receive messages from that topic using a QoS1 delivery assurance level. We will simulate this transaction diagram using two instances of MQTT.fx and capture these packets in Wireshark. Successful completion of this lab exercise results in a Wireshark capture of the packets in the simulated message sequence. Note that the overall QoS is equal to the lower of the two clients, in this case a QoS level of 1. And so just to summarize what we will have learned in this section of the class and after completion of Lab 2, we've learned that MQTT offers 3 delivery assurance options called QoS0, QoS1, and QoS2. QoS refers to the delivery assurance level between a sender and a receiver. The QoS for publishing can be different than the QoS for subscribing. The overall QoS is the lower of the two. And finally, we will learn that the client ID can be used in Wireshark as a display filter to isolate traffic from a specific MQTT client. So let me just demonstrate that for you. Okay. So same basic setup as Lab 1. So you have, of course, Wireshark. As we had for Lab 1, we're going to use Wireshark to capture all this. We have our publisher client that we set up in Lab 1. So in Lab 2, you're going to set up a subscriber client in the same way. Again, a really key part of setting up the connection profile is to click the Generate button, and you're going to create a different client ID. And again, we don't need to really change anything in the other settings. So we have our publisher client and we have our subscriber client. And again, guys, just be absolutely clear. An MQTT client can be both a publisher and a subscriber at the same time. I've just sort of created, just to make it easy, I've just dedicated one client here to be just publisher and this second client just to be the subscriber. So what you'll be doing, let me fix this size. So we are going to start a capture in Wireshark, and we know how to do that from Lab 1. We click the gear icon, select our interface, and select our capture filter, which is TCP space port space 1883. Click Start. So it's waiting for data for captures, MQTT packets. So the first thing we need to do, again, what we're doing is following this transaction diagram here. This is what we're doing, right? So the publisher has to connect, and then the subscriber has to connect. The subscriber then has to subscribe to a topic. Of course, it has to be the same topic that the publisher has to publish to. When the publisher publishes, we're going to publish with QoS2. When the subscriber subscribes, we're subscribing with QoS1. And then they're both going to disconnect. And this is the transaction. So let me just go through that. So we have Wireshark listening. We're going to connect both clients. So publisher client connects. We should recognize this sequence of TCP and MQTT messages. We connect the subscriber. So they're both connected. Now you see the publish, we can publish, and what you need to do is you need to create a topic to publish to. So we're going to use the topic we're going to identify is called sensors/kitchen/temperature. And I'm going to ask you to append a random 5-digit number at the end of this, because if all of you guys are doing this lab at the same time and you're all publishing to the same topic, you're going to clobber each other. So for when each of you are running Lab 2, you're going to append a random 5-digit number. And what I like to do
sorry,
is
one question. Where did you get that string there? Can you make it bigger also?
I just made it up. It's just arbitrary. No. It's in the lab instructions. So let me just go to, you can basically go to a website called random.org. And basically you can, I'm just showing you the procedure to generate a random number from 1 to 100,000. So it'll give you a number here, and you just append this to your string here, right? So for a publisher, you need to create a topic, and we're just creating an arbitrary topic here. It looks like we're defining a temperature sensor in the kitchen, right? But you're going to randomize it with a 5-digit number.
Yeah, so the question was, the question is that string, that sensor / did you just type that, or did you input that somewhere else in the settings?
Yes, you enter it on this line here. See this? There's a box here. So I have entered this already before the class today, just to speed things up.
Right? Oh, okay. It was not.
Okay, so you just type it. You have to type it, and then of course, when you're publishing, you publish to a topic, and you have to provide data. So this is where we have to input a payload, and here my payload is a parameter called temperature, and I'm set the value to 25. So you would just type this in, but I've already typed it in. Right, so and the other thing you need to set up in the publisher is the QoS level, and we're trying to set up at QoS level 2, so you have to click this button here. So our publisher is ready to go, but remember, we want to subscribe to it first. So similarly down here on your subscriber client, you click the subscribe tab here, type in the same topic here. We're going to subscribe to a quality of service level 1, and then click subscribe. So now the messages came here. So Wireshark is capturing all of this, and we'll filter it out later. So now we're ready to go. So we have a subscriber that's connected, and it's subscribed and listening for messages coming in on this topic. We go back to our publisher, and now we can publish the message. And hopefully you see down here, the payload was received in the payload window of the receiver. Right, so if we change the temperature to 26 degrees, click publish, right? So we see here now the message was received, temperature of 26 degrees. Okay, and then when you see that, then you click disconnect the publisher, disconnect the subscriber, and that's the transaction. We just simulated the transaction, and then you're going to go into Wireshark. We've stopped the capture in Wireshark, and right now you see all this jumble of messages, all these MQTT messages, which is basically a mixture of messages that were sent from the publisher and the subscriber. And what we want to do is we want to just verify that we see these messages, right? We want to sort of troubleshoot our publisher client, and we want to troubleshoot our subscriber client. So how do we separate these messages, in Wireshark? And the way we do that, and this is the other objective of Lab 2, is we use a display filter. So with the capture filter stopped here, you go to the up here, this box that says apply a display filter. And what you have to do is each of your MQTT clients, you have a client ID. So you go to the connection profile and you highlight your client ID and you copy it. And then you go here and you type a display filter called MQTT.clientID equals, and then you paste your client ID. And it will basically show you the packet from whatever client had this client ID. Remember, the client ID is only used when the client connects to the broker, the very first connect message. So it found the one connect packet from the one client. And to see the whole sequence of communication from that client to the server, you just right-click on this packet, click on Follow, and then select TCP Stream. And so you get this window that shows the payload of that first packet, but we don't want that. This is actually what we want here. What's actually shown now, right? This is actually the full sequence of messages that we just went through, right? So we can see here for the publisher, right? Because I filtered on the client ID of the publisher client. So we see here it connected. There's a couple of ping requests and stuff, which we'll talk about in the next section of the class. Then here we go, publish message, publish receive, publish release, publish complete, right? We're going to see these 4 MQTT messages corresponding to the 4 stages of a quality of service 2 delivery. So you actually can see that in Wireshark. And then we have the disconnect. So similarly, if you want to filter out just the transactions related to the subscribing client, you go back up here. So we're going to click on the X here to kind of delete this display filter to just go back to the original saved data. And for our subscribing client, we go to the connection profile, right? Copy this client ID for the subscribing client. Go to Wireshark, type a display filter, MQTT.clientID equals the client identifier for the subscribing client. And same thing. So when this client connected, this was the connect command because it matches the client ID that's embedded in this message. We right click, select follow TCP stream. Again, this is the content of the payload of that packet that was captured, but we don't want to look at that. What we want is just to see this is the whole sequence of communication, and it should match, right? It should match this side here. The transaction should match. You know, this is what we try to simulate, right? So we want to capture it in Wireshark and confirm that this is what actually happened. So we see here it connected. Again, a couple of the ping requests, right? Because it took me a while between the time of connecting to actually subscribing. So the MQTT clients automatically send a ping to the server just to let them know that they're okay. Again, we'll talk about this in the next section of the course. But the key parts that we want to see are the subscribe requests. And then we see here for publishing, right? There were 2 messages actually published. Remember, I published 2 temperature readings here, 25 and 26. And each of these just had 2 parts because it was a QoS1. Remember, when we subscribed, it was a QoS1 subscription. So when the messages were sent to it from the broker, there's only a publish and a pullback. You should only see 2 MQTT messages, right? Just a publish and a pullback. That corresponds to a QoS1 delivery. Okay, and then finally the disconnect.